Hi, and welcome to Education Roundtable. My name is Larry Petraccaro, and I have with me Falynn Balassone. Falynn is the Director of Counseling, if I've got that right, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that means, what it encompasses, and how it may have evolved over the last few years, or maybe the last more than a few years, depending on how it goes. But before we get started, Falynn, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. Had you been a teacher before you got into this? What brought you into the educational establishment, what brought you into counseling, and what brought you to Maplewood, South Orange?
Sure. So I had a little bit of a winding path. I was not a teacher before and had no education experience before. I actually wanted to work in the music industry my whole life and did that first. That was my first career, working in the music industry. And then what I decided I wanted to do was go back to school to get my master's in higher education so that I could be a director of student activities at a college and work on bringing the bands to the colleges, because I did that a lot when I was in college. I worked with the board at my college and loved that. So I thought, ooh, this would be a great way to continue working in the music industry, but do something a little bit more on pace with what I was interested in. So I went back to Montclair State University to get my counseling degree, and I did start on the higher education track, but along the way, I became more interested in other types of counseling, ended up switching to the school counseling track, and I did my internship at Madison High School in Madison, loved it, never looked back. I said, I'm going to be working with high school students for the rest of my life, and that was kind of the end. I ended up becoming a school counselor instead of pursuing my initial plan. So it was an interesting path that brought me here, but I'm so happy it did. I started working at a charter school in Newark and then ended up here at South Orange Maplewood, and I've been here for 11 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
At South Orange Maplewood?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I was a school counselor first, and now I've been the director. Yeah.
As a school counselor, before you get the director aspect of it, well, before we get into that, as a school counselor, what were some of the things that you would have had to do?
So school counselors do everything for their students. So here we have caseloads of about 200 students per counselor, grades 9 through 12, and you are responsible for the social emotional well-being of every single student on your caseload, and you're also responsible for tracking the graduation progress of every single student on your caseload, and then ultimately being the one to ensure that they've met all of the requirements to graduate high school. So with those two main responsibilities comes a lot of work along the way in helping students grow personally, academically, and in all kinds of ways to be able to meet those goals of social emotional wellness and graduation. So our daily lives as school counselors are unpredictable, which I think keeps it fun and challenging for everybody, because you could have a student, walk in with a real crisis, or you could have a student walk in just wanting to change their elective from drawing to design, something really simple. So you never know what's coming at you on a given day. So I think keeps you on your toes, and it's just wonderful to be able to work with young people at this stage of their lives when they're just first starting to explore what life is going to be like after high school. So it's the best job.
Yeah, you said a caseload of roughly 200.
Yeah.
That's all students? So I mean, does every student in the high school have a counselor? This is not just students who might have a need. It's
Nope.
Every student.
Every single student is assigned a school counselor.
And of those, on average, say 200 who are in a caseload, is it a small percentage of them that face the kind of challenges that you hope you never have to face, or is it more widespread than that?
Yeah, I think the high school years are very challenging for teenagers, whether it be academic or more personal. So I would not say that there's a small percentage of students facing challenges. I would say it's probably a large percentage, and of course at varying degrees. And challenges are relative to people. So what may seem like a small challenge to someone may seem very big to the student who's experiencing it.
Yeah.
So it's really just about like meeting every student where they are, and letting them know that, you know, their school counselor is their person who they can trust, who they can go to for anything, whether big or small. And, you know, we'll be there to listen to them, support them. And if we can't help them, we'll make sure we connect them with help outside.
And do the counselors in that function make a point of seeing every student at least once a year or once a quarter or whatever it might be?
Yes.
Or do you wait for the student to reach out to you?
No. So we have actual programming and a curriculum that we follow, which does involve seeing each grade level at various times throughout the year. You know, there's different things based on the grade level that we'd be doing. So obviously, you know, all fall, the counselors are working with the seniors really closely on their college applications. So it kind of changes based on the time of year and what the curriculum is calling for during that season or that month, but we do make sure that we connect with each and every student on the caseload, and of course a lot of the time is spent with students who are coming down on their own.
And we're here at the high school, but you were mentioning that I think that you also perform that function at the middle school.
Yeah, so we do have school counselors at both of our middle schools here in the district, which is wonderful. And they do a lot of work, a lot of social emotional work at the middle schools, and they're like an amazing team at both places. And I'm the counselor supervisor, so I also go and work with them at the middle schools as well. And it's nice because I want to be able to build, you know, a real transition program from the middle schools to the high school, since I'm able to have my hands in both places. So in a few weeks, we're having the middle schools bring the 8th graders over to the high school to, you know, have a short assembly and some tours so they can walk around the building and see. So I want to be able to build that up and really try to make it so that 8th graders are ready, or at least prepared for what's to come when they come here in September.
Well, in terms of the counselors at the middle school and in the high school, even though the basic function, I guess, in trying to ensure the well-being and the growth is the same, are there any like significant differences between what they have to do in the middle school as opposed to what they have to do in the high school? Because the kids in the middle school are probably not getting ready to go to college, you know.
Right, so they're not doing post-secondary planning, although they do a lot of like early college and career awareness, the counselors down there, but they're not working on the college application process. So, you know, they're more like doing more groups and doing other things with the kids. They are also involved in things that the high school counselors aren't, because the high school counselors are busy doing other things here that they're not there. So it's like a different role. Based on what the building needs and what they need the counselors to contribute to building-wide. So both teams are very busy all of the time with students, but like in different ways. So it's also been fun for me to kind of see that at play.
Well, when you're working with the counselors, your staff is working with the kids in the high school, and one of the things you mentioned was that they would help them prepare a college application process. Do you also help them try to make some decisions about what's the right college to go to, maybe what's even the right, if not the right, but something they ought to think about in terms of a major? I mean, how deeply, and what's important when if you're helping someone who's getting ready to make that college application process, what are you looking at in terms of what they've done at the high school, not only academically, and maybe what they've done in the community, what they've done in extracurricular? Is there some sort of format that the counselors use to help the student focus on making at least an informed decision?
Yeah, definitely. That's a big part of our job. And of course, it's not just college. We have students who are interested in career, trade, military, gap years, everything like that. But like over 95% of our students apply to four-year college. So that's why I often just talk about that, because most of our students are going through that process of applying for the four-year college. But of course, we also help with students who are not interested in college and want to take a different path. And for all of our students, it's a lot of family work. So it's not just student and counselor privately. We invite the families in for these big senior meetings to discuss the post-secondary plan, whatever it may be. And it's not just about, what the student starts to envision for themselves, but it's also, what's going to work for the family, and what's going to be realistic for you, and where are you going to be most successful? Like, we want to set you up for success. And so whether it's college or not, those are the first kinds of questions that we're asking and trying to bring in the family to get that whole family dynamic picture and the whole plan there. And some students are at different spots. So, some students just know, I just want to go to the four-year college that will be most affordable for my family. I don't care about major. I don't care about this. That's just the most important thing to my family. So let's do that. Other students come in, I'm really looking for a very specific major in, information systems or some very specific thing. And, then we're able to help them filter it that way. We do use a computer program called SCORE. It's a very cool little platform for college and career exploration for the students. So they all have accounts on there, and you can do a lot of exploration on there, and ultimately manage your application process through there. So we also rely on a lot of the data from that program to help guide students with their decisions.
Well, what does that mean in terms of what can they search for? Can they search for the size of the college?
Yes, it's like a very sophisticated search engine, college search engine, where they can plug all kinds of things in, including the diversity on campus, whether it's LGBTQ friendly. There's all these different things that you can search for using the SCORE search. And then what's really cool about it is that you get a bunch of results, and for each college you can pull up the data of Columbia High School students who've applied to that college and who's gotten in and who hasn't based on their GPA, test scores, all kinds of things. So that helps us guide students towards, colleges that might be considered a safety school that's very likely you would get into, or, oh wow, this college has really never accepted someone from Columbia with your grades before, so this might be a little bit of a reach, right? So let's make sure we have some safeties too. So we do rely heavily on our data that's housed in that program to guide students to, realistic options that are going to be right for them.
And if you have a student who's a star athlete, does that change the process any?
So we do have athletes at Columbia High School who get recruited by colleges, and that is an entirely different process if they're getting recruited by a college. Of course, we always encourage them to still do their regular process with their counselor, because what if this doesn't work out? What if you get an injury? So it's always very exciting when a student gets recruited by a college, but we also encourage them to still kind of follow the same process with their counselor, thinking, what do I want my plan to be if this doesn't work out with the recruiting?
Well, if they're being recruited by a college, is that just something between the college that's doing the recruiting and the family, or does the counseling service try to provide some guidance as well as to what kind of questions they might ask and how they?
We're available to help support the students through that, and of course we help coordinate the transfer of documentation through NCAA. So we do still play a role when students are being recruited, but I would say it's primarily the coaches from the colleges reaching out to our students.
So they're after that athletic ability.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any one piece of advice I'll just that you can give. I remember when one of my sons was in that process you're talking about. This was a long time ago, but what the at that time guidance counselor said was, pick a school, visit a school that's urban, visit a school that's rural, visit a school that's big, visit a school that's small, as a way to weed out. If you pick a school that was in the middle of a city and you really wanted to be out in the woods, this wasn't the best. Is that still a valid?
It's definitely for our students who come in not having any thoughts yet about what they want and just really not having an idea of where to start. We do recommend just think about the state of New Jersey and all the wonderful colleges we have right here. You could get on the train and go take a tour of Drew University without even needing an adult, right? You could do that and go down to Rutgers for a big state university feel, take the train the other way to see NYU, and get an idea of, those different types of colleges just to get started off. So that's a piece of advice we do give. The biggest piece of advice I say that I give to families as a whole, especially to parents, is that the best thing you can do for your child in this process is to be upfront and honest with them early on about the financial situation, so they don't start to get excited about things that just aren't going to work for your family. So upfront, before they start touring and before they start kind of picking their colleges, figure out if there's a limit financially and have that honest conversation with them. And then there's going to be plenty of options for them to get excited about that will fit what works for your family. Okay. So that's a piece of advice I love to echo whenever I can.
Okay, well, what fits for us right now is to take a break.
Great.
So we're going to take a break, so if you'll stay with us, we'll be back in about a minute.
Dad, we need to talk. If you're not gonna listen to me, who will you listen to?
Jeffrey!
Is that Marcia Gay Harden?
I think so.
You're getting older.
Not that old.
Your brain is changing.
That's what I was saying.
Honey, I've got experience with this. Jeffrey, brain health is all about making the most of your brain as you age.
Really? Whoa!
Where did she go?
Learn what you can do to help keep your brain healthy at brainhealth.gov.
Well, welcome back to Education Roundtable. This is Larry Petraccaro with Falynn Balassone, and we've been talking about the counseling, the aspects of what happens here at Columbia, and to some extent what happens at the middle school. And we want to continue on that. So what I'd like to kind of start off with, Falynn, is the when you studied, and you mentioned that you actually mentioned there were several different guidance tracks. Or counseling tracks, I think is what you said. So what kind of courses do you have to take, and do you have to do an internship? Well, I think you said you did do an internship, and so how long does that take?
Right. So in order to become a school counselor nowadays, you do need to have a master's degree in counseling and a school counselor certificate. And part of the master's degree is doing not only a practicum, but also an internship. So you pretty much have to do a full year in a school. Supervised by a certified school counselor. And that has been the biggest change in the field that not a lot of people know about from, back in the 60s and 70s when there first became guidance counselors, which at the time were just teachers who were like on special assignment to give career advice to students. So a lot has changed since then. Now you're actually required to get a degree in counseling. And with that, the field has changed to be a more all-encompassing role when working with students. We're not just providing career guidance now, we're also doing a lot of social emotional work with the students and providing like tier 1 counseling to all students. So that's something that I hope everybody knows and can learn from this.
Yeah. What, I'm going to have to ask, what is tier 1 counseling?
So tier 1 counseling is like anything that you don't feel needs to be elevated to a clinical level. So if a student's just like upset, stressed about a class, oh, come in, let's talk, let's sit together, something that you can provide to all the students. I consider it tier 2 when the counselor feels like, oh, this might be something that we need like a clinical social worker or like a licensed clinician to evaluate. We would then refer them to one of our folks in the building who has that certificate for more of that like tier 2 type of clinical concern, because we aren't licensed clinicians, but we are counselors, so we do tier 1 counseling. All right, it's a little confusing, but
No, I think it makes a reasonable amount of sense, is knowing where to get some other help.
Right.
Is basically what you're saying,
right?
And that's something maybe we could talk a little bit about, because it seems to be in the news a lot, about the mental stress, I guess mental and emotional stress that a lot of students are going through today, whether it's due to COVID or whether it's due to social media. I'm not sure, but well, two questions then. What role do you think COVID has played in the mental stress of the students, and what about social media?
Oh, for sure, both of them. I think that COVID has, and still is, impacting our students in a huge way. I think everyone had a different experience during that time, the past 2 years, and some people were really isolated and really barely left their house and didn't connect with friends, and just kind of forgot how to be a social being. And we're seeing that for sure, not just us at Columbia, but all over the world. Everyone's seeing that with teenagers, and it's definitely challenging, and I like to think that now we can start to kind of grow out of it a little bit, and kind of move forward now that we're all back together again, and try to like relearn some of those tools and those social skills that we lost there for a couple of years. So COVID was definitely detrimental. I also think academically it caused a lot of challenges. And social media for sure. I can't imagine being a teenager nowadays with social media where anyone can just go on and say whatever they want to you anonymously. It's definitely caused a lot of problems again all over the world for teenagers. And I think all we can do is try to work with students to talk about like healthy consumption of social media, and also just like about how to treat others kindly and think about the impact of your words and your actions. So it's definitely a huge part of, I think, the mental health issues that we're seeing globally right now, especially amongst young people. I like to think also that now that the stigma of mental health issues is like lifting a little bit, I'd say, with this next generation, I also like to think that people are just coming forward more with mental health struggles. And so maybe teenagers always had this, but they were just keeping it to themselves. I kind of like to think that we know about it and we're hearing about it a lot because people are coming forward, which makes me feel like at least there's some promise. If people feel they can talk about it, then we can maybe try to get some help.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, other than it seems to me anyway, other than this prevalence of social media, that the kids probably would have been having the same problems or the same issues. Is there any one issue that when kids do come to you and you know it's an issue with the mental stress or mental distress, is there any one issue that tends to predominate, whether it's academic, social media, or in sports? I mean,
I think a lot of just general anxiety. We hear a lot of reports of anxiety among students, and I know, again, not just us, but worldwide. That seems to be a big thing that we hear a lot of and that we try to help students with every day, whether it's a long-term anxiety or just, right now I'm feeling really anxious in class, can I come sit with you type of thing.
well, is that anxiety something that is, well, you said it's all over the globe, but is it specific to stress, or is it specific to being a teenager? I mean, or do you?
If I knew,
Okay.
yeah, I'd have a best-selling book if I knew the answer.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of the biggest reports that we get in the office.
They're anxious
is
about something.
Yeah.
If parents were wanting to pay attention to signs that their child may be in distress of some kind or anxious about something, are there any things that maybe they should pay attention to? I mean, that might be a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, definitely just the typical change in diet, change in sleep, change in habit, routine, anything like that. Anything where you notice there's a change in the way your child is acting or behaving could be a red flag. Also, like isolating, which I think COVID has caused a gray area there because people are isolating for different reasons. But if, your child normally did such and such and went out with friends and talked on the phone with friends, and now you're seeing them kind of withdraw a little bit and spend more time alone in their room and not really be connecting, that could be a red flag too. So please definitely reach out to your student school counselor if you have any concerns at all.
So parents shouldn't be reluctant to reach
Nope.
out.
Please reach out to your school counselor any day, every day.
Does that counselor stay with that student for the 4 years, or does?
Yep.
So it's not specific to the grades.
Nope. So the goal is that they'll stay for 4 years. Of course, we can't control things like people leaving and maternity leaves, but we do the best we can to keep everyone for the 4 years with the student.
How do colleges, which is one of the things you talked about, helping students prepare to move on to college, how do colleges see Columbia?
From my perspective, they
Yes.
love Columbia, but I don't know if they would say to me that they don't like us, but they seem to like us a lot. Every year we have students get into all different kinds of colleges, which I always think is really cool. Like, it's not, I'm not just proud about the Ivy League acceptances, which of course we're proud of, but we always have, students get accepted for musical theater to really competitive conservatories and like other really cool programs and scholarships. So I think it's just so fun to celebrate all of the different plans that the kids end up having, whether it's college or not. We have kids who go on to do really cool things, whatever it may be. So it seems to me that colleges and any kind of post-secondary program love Columbia because we always have a lot to celebrate every year.
Well, Columbia does have Hall of Fame or Wall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
So there have been some pretty interesting graduates that come out. I had heard at one point, and I don't know if you can confirm this or maybe it's just anecdotal, that colleges like Columbia because of the fact that there was a certain diverse environment here, and that for them was a positive. Have you ever heard anything of that sort?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of our students reflect on that on their applications, about living and growing up and going to school in a diverse community. So I think that what they've been able to take from that is probably attractive to colleges, and there's like a level of maturity and a different perspective that maybe kids from other places don't have. So I'm sure that that's an attribute the colleges like.
Yeah, I think the way you described it was kind of what I remember hearing. It was a certain ability to deal with more diverse group of students at the college. Now, we don't have counseling at the elementary school, but is there something analogous to that? I mean, are there kids in the elementary school that perhaps exhibit some kind of behavior that requires some intervention?
So there's social workers at the elementary
Social
schools.
workers.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between the social worker?
So they are licensed clinicians. Obviously in the elementary school, they don't need to do like scheduling and some of those other tasks that school counselors do. So they're social workers down there just for, social emotional.
That kind of help. Well, in terms of, we were talking about Columbia before, is there anything, and you've been here at Columbia now, you said 11 years.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that surprised you when you first got here, or anything that continues to surprise you since you've been here? Just, sometimes we take things for granted that we neglect to notice the exceptional elements of what we have.
The students surprise me, like how amazing they are. We were talking about it before a little bit.
Yeah, we were.
They're just like so impressive and talented and creative and smart, and that has been like the most fun for me to watch. I'm losing my voice, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I would say that's definitely been the best surprise.
Yeah, I think what we were talking before, I was just telling you some of the times that I've had the opportunity to interview the students. I've never failed to be impressed.
They're amazing.
Yeah, they're a pretty impressive bunch of kids.
Yeah.
In moving forward, counseling, I guess, has evolved, over the years. What do you see as the biggest challenges or the biggest opportunities that we may be facing in the next, 5 years or so? I mean, we talked a little bit about social media. Do you see that still having a continuing negative, positive impact on the school climate?
Yes, unfortunately. I think it's like hard to control that. Every time one platform goes away, there's like some new platform. So I feel like that's going to be a continuing challenge. And I just think the mental health issues that we're seeing are going to be continuing challenges and our most important challenge to face for sure. And I hope we're able to rise to that challenge and meet it at Columbia, because it's the most important thing to us. And I think the more we can kind of talk about it and try to address the students and everything they present with, the better it'll be. But I definitely see that as our biggest challenge.
We only have a little less than a minute left, so just if you can answer this, do our students tend to do well once they leave us?
They do. So like we love as school counselors when the kids come back to visit after they've graduated. It's like the best. So usually it falls around, that first Thanksgiving, when the kids come home for Thanksgiving, that first year, they kind of run back to the high school and to see everybody. And it's so fun. We love those days, and not just seeing them and hugging them, but getting to hear about how happy they are. And I just think that it's wonderful. We have a grads return program around the holidays every year, where we have like panels with our graduates, and our current students can come to the panel. And it's just so wonderful to be able, not only for us, but for our students to be able to see like what Columbia High School grads go off to do. So it's the best feeling, definitely, as a school counselor, when they want to come back and see you.
When they come back.
Yeah.
Well, Falynn, thank you. Thank you for joining us on Books in Action. I think we're out of time, so thank you, and we'll look for you again.
Thank you.
Falynn, thanks.
Happy to have been here.
Yeah, appreciate it.